Sergeant Major Jack Gravel McCoy squinted against the harsh mountain sun, his weathered face a map of old scars and newer worries. At 50, he was twice the age of most of the Marines under his command, and felt every year of it in his aching bones. "Listen up, you fresh-faced morons," he growled, his voice a gravelly rasp from years of shouting orders and breathing in God knows what on a dozen different worlds. Here's Razor's Pass. It's the only thing between 10 million chittering bugs and the evacuation zones back home. Our job is simple: we hold this line, or humanity's done for. Private Sarah Chen, all of 22 and still green as spring grass, raised her hand. "Sir, what about reinforcements?" Jack barked out a laugh that held no humor. "Reinforcements? Kid, we are the reinforcements. It's just us and whatever the hive throws at us until this war is won, or we're all bug food." As the squad began fortifying their position, Jack's mind drifted back to his first war, 30 years ago. He'd been as young and naive as Chen back then, thinking war was all glory and heroism. 5 conflicts and countless battles later, he knew better. War was hell, plain and simple, and this one against the insectoid hive was shaping up to be the worst yet. "Rodriguez," Jack shouted, spotting the corporal setting up a plasma turret. "You put that thing there, and the first rocket bug that comes along will blow it to kingdom come. Move it back, use the ridge for cover." Rodriguez scowled but complied. These kids might not like Jack's methods, but they'd learn to appreciate them soon enough. Or they'd die. That's how war worked. The first attack came just before dusk. A wave of worker soldiers, more cannon fodder than real threat, but numerous enough to be dangerous. Jack had been ready. "Funnel him into the kill zone," he ordered, watching with grim satisfaction as the hive forces bottlenecked into the narrowest part of the pass. "Light him up." The air filled with the sound of gunfire and the acrid smell of burning chitin. Jack's carefully placed traps, plasma mines, and gravity wells decimated the hive's front lines. When it was over, hundreds of alien corpses littered the ground, with only minor injuries on the human side. "Don't get cocky," Jack warned his celebrating squad. "That was just the appetizer. Main course is still coming." He was right. Over the next 3 days, the attacks escalated. Rocket bugs that could level fortifications with a single shot. Tunnelers that tried to burrow under their defenses. Each time, Jack's experience and quick thinking kept them alive, but the cost was mounting. On the 4th day, as Jack was helping Chen patch up a nasty gash in her arm, the ground began to tremble. He looked up to see a veritable tide of hive forces pouring into the pass, led by massive tank-like creatures that shrugged off direct hits from their heaviest weapons. "Fall back to secondary positions," Jack roared, half carrying Chen as they retreated. "Mendoza, Kowalski with me." In the chaos of the hive's assault, Jack led his small team to a precarious outcropping overlooking the main invasion force. They'd rigged this section of the mountain days ago, on Jack's insistence. Now, as he looked at the sea of chitinous bodies below, he knew it was time. "Fire in the hole," he muttered, pressing the detonator. The mountain shook as tons of rock came crashing down, crushing hundreds of hive soldiers and cutting off the main force from their forward units. In the ensuing confusion, Jack's squad was able to rally and push back the remaining attackers. But the victory was bitter. As Jack looked over what remained of his command, he saw the cost written in blood and empty spaces where soldiers had stood that morning. Of the 30 that had started this mission, only 18 remained. As night fell, Jack made his way through the camp, checking on his soldiers. He found Chen sitting alone, staring at nothing. "Hell of a day, kid," he said, lowering himself down beside her with a grunt. Chen looked at him, her eyes haunted. "How do you do it, Sarge? How do you keep going after all this?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from his very soul, he began to speak. He told her about his first squad, wiped out to the last man in a forgotten battle on a moon whose name he couldn't even remember anymore. He spoke of the friends he'd lost, the nightmares that still plagued him, the family he'd never had because the war always came first. "You keep going because you have to," he finally said. "Because if you don't, then all those sacrifices mean nothing. And kid." Chen looked at him questioningly. A ghost of a smile crossed Jack's face. "You're doing just fine." As he stood to leave, the proximity alarms began to wail. In the distance, they could hear the rhythmic stamping of thousands of hive feet. The next wave was coming, bigger than anything they'd faced before. Jack looked at Chen, saw the fear in her eyes, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the need to give hope. "All right, Marines," he shouted, his voice carrying across the camp. "Looks like the bugs want round two. I say we show these overgrown cockroaches what happens when they pick a fight with humanity. Who's with me?" The cheer that went up was ragged but heartfelt. As his soldiers rushed to their positions, Jack allowed himself a grim smile. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and probably doomed. But they weren't beaten. Not yet. The hive was about to learn a harsh lesson about human determination, and Sergeant Major Jack Gravel McCoy was just the grizzled old coot to teach it to them. The night sky lit up with the glow of plasma fire and burning chitin as the hive's latest assault crashed against the human defenses. Sergeant Major Jack McCoy stood atop their makeshift command center, barking orders and adjustments as the battle raged. "Sing. Shift your fire left. They're trying to flank us," he roared, his voice carrying over the din of combat. "Chen, I need that heavy repeater operational 5 minutes ago." As Chen scrambled to repair the damaged weapon, Jack allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. His ragtag group of Marines had held out for a week now, far longer than anyone, including himself, had thought possible. But he knew they were living on borrowed time. When the attack finally subsided, leaving hundreds of alien corpses strewn across the mountainside, Jack called his remaining officers together. "All right, listen up," he growled, spreading out a crude map of the area. "We can't keep playing defense. It's time we take the fight to them." Corporal Rodriguez looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "With all due respect, Sarge, are you insane? We're outnumbered at least 100 to 1. Jack fixed him with a steely glare. "That's why they won't expect it, kid. We're going to hit EM where it hurts, using every dirty trick I've learned in 30 years of war." Over the next few days, Jack led his squad in a series of daring raids into hive-controlled territory. They used the treacherous mountain terrain to their advantage, setting ambushes in narrow ravines and triggering rock slides to decimate enemy patrols. During one such mission, they stumbled upon a downed hive transport. Jack's eyes lit up with an idea that was equal parts brilliant and insane. "Chen, Rodriguez, help me salvage what we can from this wreck," he ordered. "I've got a notion that might just turn this war around." Working through the night, they cobbled together a hybrid weapon that combined human ingenuity with alien biotechnology. The result was a gun that fired projectiles coated in synthesized hive pheromones, sowing confusion in the enemy ranks and turning the aliens against each other. As they field-tested their new weapon, a transmission came through on their emergency channel. The garbled message sent a chill down Jack's spine. A hive queen was en route, coming to personally oversee the elimination of the human resistance. "Well, ain't that just the cherry on top of this shit sundae," Jack muttered. But beneath his cynical exterior, his mind was racing. If they could take out the queen, it might throw the entire hive into disarray. Gathering his squad, Jack laid out his plan. It was risky, bordering on suicidal, but it was the best shot they had. "I won't lie to you," he said, looking each of them in the eye. "Most of us probably won't make it back from this one. Anyone who wants to sit it out, now's your chance." Not a single soldier moved. Jack felt a surge of pride he hadn't experienced in years. "All right then," he nodded, a ghost of a smile on his weathered face. "Let's go make history." Under the cover of darkness, they infiltrated the main hive encampment. Jack led the way, decades of combat experience guiding his every move. They fought their way through waves of defenders, their hybrid weapons causing chaos in the alien ranks. Finally, they reached the Queen's chamber. The massive insectoid towered over them, her presence filling the air with a palpable malevolence. As his squad engaged the Queen's guards, Jack found himself face to face with the architect of humanity's near destruction. In that moment, every battle he'd ever fought, every scar he'd earned, every friend he'd lost, it all led to this. The fight was brutal and swift. Jack moved with a speed that belied his age, ducking under the Queen's strikes and landing blow after punishing blow with his powered exosuit. When it was over, the Queen lay dead at his feet, and an unearthly shriek rose from the hive forces as they felt their leader's demise. Now that Jack panted, wiping alien ichor from his face, is how you end a goddamn war. The trip back to Razor's Pass was a blur of running battles and desperate last stands. They lost good people along the way, each death another weight on Jack's conscience. But they'd done it. They'd struck a blow that might just save humanity. As they crested the final ridge, a sight greeted them that Jack had long since stopped hoping for, dropships bearing the insignia of the Earth Defense Force, landing in the pass below. Later, as medics tended to the wounded and fresh troops secured the area, Jack found a quiet spot to sit and watch the sunrise. Chen approached, offering him a battered canteen. "Hell of a fight, Sarge," she said, a newfound respect in her voice. Jack took a long drink before replying. "They always are, kid." But you know what? He looked at the young soldiers around him, battered but unbowed. "For the first time in a long time, I think we might just have a future worth fighting for." As the sun climbed higher, painting the mountains in hues of gold and red, Sergeant Major Jack Gravel McCoy allowed himself to feel something he'd thought long lost hope. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. But humanity had proven itself once again, standing firm against impossible odds. And if anyone wanted to test that strength again, well, Jack grinned, the expression making him look years younger. They'd find the line still unbroken, and one grumpy old sergeant ready to show them the meaning of human resolve. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe and leave it a like, and I'll see you in the next one.